Coming up next on This Week in Computer Hardware, Microsoft Surface. We had to talk about it. An affordable laptop graphics roundup, Western Digital's new routers, thumbs up. New Drobos are on the way. Vapor chamber, not so much. Buying the right side power supply, and a big viewer thumbs up on the Cat Leap monitors.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for TWiCH is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is TWiCH, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 175, recorded June 21st, 2012. Will Microsoft Surface flatten the competition?
This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by Ford, featuring the MyFord mobile smartphone app for electric vehicles. The MyFord mobile app makes the electric driving experience fun and efficient. Learn more about Ford electric vehicle technologies at ford.com/technology.
Welcome to This Week in Computer Hardware, a.k.a. TWiCH. I'm your host, Patrick Norton. This is the show where we sit down and try to go over the biggest and bestest news in computer hardware, take a look at the tablets, and once in a while even talk about cell phones, since they seem to be computers now, too. Joining me, as always, Mr. Ryan Shrout, who is actually at home. Well, he's at home, man. How are you like it? Do you miss Texas? Have you had migas yet?
No, I have not had migas. I'm going to write that on my hand here with this ink pen, so that when I get home, I will remember to do that. We're just back home. Needed to do a couple of specific video projects here in the Florence, Kentucky main home base operations of PC Perspective. So took a little trip out here. What's interesting is that this is the question I was going to pose to you, Patrick. Do you think you could build a PC blindfolded? Full PC?
Very slowly, but yes, I could.
Okay, that's kind of my theory too.
It depends on whether or not I have to screw in all the motherboard screws. That would slow me down considerably. I think that has to be part of it. And I think that my least favorite part is going to be hooking up the case front panel power button connector, right? To get it to turn on. That didn't work. Still doesn't power on.
Right.
Oh gosh, that would be a nightmare.
Now, I'm not going to be able to do like the hard drive lights and that kind of stuff, but so basically on Saturday afternoon, if people are interested, they can go to pcper.com/live. I think it's going to be at 2 p.m. Eastern. You can watch me attempt to build a complete AMD Llano-based PC, blindfolded, live. You can make fun of me in the chat room, and people will be here to read those messages off to me, so I know that
I'm being... Is this for charity?
It is indeed. We have me and the staff at PCPer are going to have a wager. We have to come up with a guesstimate of time. How long will it take me to build it? And if I come in under that, they have to pay, and if I come in over that, I have to pay. So we will have to discuss a specific time. I think I'm going with like a 25-minute thing, which I think is fair. I think 25 minutes might be fair. I don't know. We'll see.
That's going to be intense, dude. I think your fingers are going to be a little bloody by the end of that battle.
I did tell Ken, who's here, I was like, you have to tell me if I start to bleed on the components because I won't be able to see, right? So that's important. So apparently you have missing solid state drive too?
Yeah, I'm in the process of swapping out. Part of the reason I've been playing around, I've been doing some benchmarking between Thunderbolt and USB 2.0, and then I got a Z77 motherboard on the way, so I can do Thunderbolt versus USB 3.0 versus USB 2.0. Or if I could, pry a Retina MacBook out of somebody, I suppose I could do it on that. But I'm running a MacBook Pro, which is very comparable in specs to my MacBook Air, except instead of a SSD, it's got a hard drive. So instead of my 256 gigabyte SSD, I'm running like a 512 gigabyte hard drive. And you forget just how long resume from like standby or hibernation, launching applications. It's kind of amazing how much longer everything takes on a hard drive when you've gotten used to an SSD, which my way of saying, if you're thinking about putting a notebook in your SSD or your desktop, and it's a great time because the prices, they keep coming down.
Yeah.
Go for it. Because
agreed.
It's nice. And I'm looking at this and thinking like, gosh, I should have pulled the SSD out of and then I'm like, oh, wait, that doesn't really work as a form factor.
No, yeah.
Should we talk about Microsoft Surface at this point?
I think we have to.
Yeah, it's probably the biggest news in hardware this week. So Microsoft Microsoft has been doing Windows RT, which is their ARM-based version, Windows 8, which is their Intel, it's Windows 8, right? It's designed to run an Intel and AMD PCs. So out of pretty much nowhere, with about maybe 72 hours notice, Microsoft is sending out invitations. And if you could be in LA at like 3 o'clock on Monday, we want you to come to this warehouse. People are like, WTF?
I love that.
To exterminate us? Yeah, what's going on here? So people line up, they wait for an hour, they get inside. It's a tablet. It's the Microsoft Surface tablet. There's going to be Microsoft Surface RT or Microsoft Windows RT, which is essentially the ARM version of Windows 8. There's going to be Microsoft Surface, which is running. They built 2 tablets, one with an ARM processor, one with a Core i5 processor. The Core i5 is like Windows Surface Pro, which is running faster and delivering less battery life. And then the other one is Windows Surface RT, which is on the ARM processor, which is probably more fun and consumer-oriented, which is going to deliver longer battery life. They're both 10.6-inch screens. They're like right around a pound and a half, very comparable to first-generation iPad. 9.3 millimeters for the ARM version, 13.5 millimeters for the Intel version. And everybody know who got to go to the event, like Mark Hochman over at PC Mag, got literally 10 seconds with it. Big line of people, touch it, ooh, it's shiny, it's green, and back and gone. No, it's going to release with Windows 8, which is going to be later this year. No pricing detail. Really weird announcement, because the other thing is like, hey, all you people who sell our operating system on the PCs you build, like HP, Dell, and other notable manufacturers like Lenovo and everybody else who sells PCs around the world, we're going to start competing with you in the hardware market because y'all keep screwing up tablets. Well, y'all keep building Android tablets, but it's an interesting move from Microsoft. I'm not entirely sure it makes sense to me. And the reaction in the media has been everything from Microsoft shows everyone how it should be done to what is Microsoft thinking to, looks like a tablet running Windows 8.
So you're not more impressed by kind of like I had the same thoughts of you, like Asus, HP, Dell. These guys are going to be ticked off. But I have this kind of unfortunate thought that in order to compete against Apple and the iPad and the way they have complete and total control over software and hardware integration, that both Google and Microsoft need to have at least one option where they can go down that path. Right. I think there's a good possibility of it completely ruining their partnerships for both Google and Microsoft, but I think,
they may not care.
They may not, right? So Microsoft may say, we're going to go completely vertical, right? And it's going to be a 10-year process, but we think this is how we have to compete, right? Because our partners aren't keeping up with Apple. They're always doing what Apple does 2 or 3 years later. And in order for them to jump ahead, they're doing this whole thing. I think it looks great. I think the functionality looks really impressive. The kind of keyboard technology, you can tell they spent, a lot of money and kind of time on the design side, which as computers become more commoditized, becomes much more of an important factor in somebody's buying decision with that kind of stuff. I think it was disappointing there was no pricing information. I think it was disappointing that they didn't have release dates. I think it was really disappointing that they wouldn't even let people take video of them being used, right? All you saw were hands-on impressions, and it was all text. And the reason it was all text is because they weren't letting people take video of it in action. I think they were able to get some photos of that and that kind of stuff. So I'm tentatively excited about these products. And battery life is one of the things that they didn't mention specifically in the press conference that I think is going to be very important. If they can get, so there's the ARM model and the Intel model, I think it's just Surface and then Surface Pro, I guess, are the other names they're giving them. Surface Pro is Ivy Bridge based. If they can somehow wiggle out 8, 9, 10 hours of battery life out of that using the keyboard dock, one of the 2 keyboard docks, I could very much see me using this instead of a laptop, like a traditional clamshell type laptop. As people who know me, in terms of mobile devices, I'm a big fan of kickstands. Like my HTC Evo 4G has one, and I use it a lot, and it's just really handy. And when I saw that on the Surface, I was like, oh, makes perfect sense. Somebody should have integrated one of those in there. But and the ARM one is also very interesting. It's a big deal for NVIDIA, right? They are the SoC of choice, essentially, for Windows RT, according to Microsoft. So if you're Asus, Dell, and HP, are you going to start going to NVIDIA to source these ARM-based chips as well, because Microsoft is putting all their weight behind them? They're showing, hey, these guys were the best or the most prepared or the earliest and that kind of stuff. It'll be interesting in that regard, too, just from a pure hardware side of things.
It was interesting. One of the gadget blogs actually said, and of course I can't find the link, basically said that this isn't a shot at Apple so much as it is a shot at laptops. And then Gizmodo, one of the more interesting articles I read was a Gizmodo write-up where they looked at it's kind of funny, the opening lead graph. Microsoft has guts. It's what you get when you're the underdog. Either that or you curl into a rim and die. The article is called Microsoft Surface just made the MacBook Air and the iPad obsolete, which I think is pushing it a little bit. But they basically say that they've kind of out Jonathan Ives with this, because they're looking at the 10 principles of Dieter Rams, which is the guy who kind of is the inspiration for Jonathan Ives' design ethos. Good design is innovative. It makes a product useful. It's aesthetic. It helps us understand the product. It's unobtrusive. It's honest. It's durable. It's consequent to the last detail. And when you've got somebody like Microsoft going like, look, we didn't screw up the stand. Listen, it sounds like a luxury door car closing. It sounds like a 57 Chevy. It sounds like BMW. It sounds like something that says apple pie in America and building things. And it's a really kind of like, okay, Microsoft, that's unusual for you, as is the warehouse, as is they're making everybody wait in line. But it's kind of funny. It's like, good design is as little as possible. They're doing something that this could kind of really been an Apple thing as of late, which is using relatively advanced or I don't know, because one of the things Apple does is they fund the infrastructure, they fund the capital development for their manufacturers so they can have these amazing new processes. And it's like, okay, they've got like Vapor MG going on. This is really interesting form of magnesium for the frames. They're using Gorilla Glass 2 for the screen. So if the keyboard works, if the operating system is as smooth as we hope it is, Windows 8 I think is coming along really nicely. It'll be really interesting to see what we get for like $800 or $900, because I think they've got to be super competitive with the iPad price for this to work. I think it's going to be interesting. Like will this... because the other thing they did is like 2 days after Microsoft announces Surface, they're also like, oh, by the way, Windows 8 is here. Windows 8 Phone. Windows 8 Phone is actually a Windows kernel. It's not like the last gasp of CE. It's not going to be backwards compatible with your Windows 7 phones, but Windows 7.5 will become like Windows 8.5, I think, Windows 7 to 8.5. And they promise to do things like 18 months of upgrades. The upgrades will be over the air. The upgrades will not be tied to the carrier so that the end user can upgrade their phone. They will do, what was it? Like enhanced users, early registers. There's this really great phrase. Basically, early adopters can choose to get the updates to their phone early and help as being part of the beta test product and be like, hey, look, I got this new feature on my Windows 8 phone. So, for everybody who's been talking so much about like Microsoft's laid down and died, they're over. Man, they got a huge market base. They really, 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 really don't want to become irrelevant in the 21st century, and they are just like, all right, to hell with Dell, to hell with HP. Let's nail this thing and move forward. So I can't imagine people are happy at HP or Dell or Lenovo or the list could
I would say not.
But it'll be really interesting to see what happens, because this is also I can't decide if this is sort of a strike against Intel or something that makes Intel really happy, because all Intel wants is like, we want you to use more innovative interfaces that will require more processing power, that will require you to upgrade to a next generation Intel processor to satisfy your voice control, hand control, gesture control, weasel control, whatever control needs. So probably enough talk about Surface.
Yeah, let's
practical.
We'll mention an article that Matt Smith posted at PCPer.com. Actually, this is a really interesting article. It looks at low-end laptop graphics from several different perspectives. One is he kind of looks at the usability of the drivers from each vendor, Intel, AMD, and NVIDIA, and then compares kind of a feature set, like how many displays do they support, what kind of anti-aliasing support, what kind about switchable graphics support, Optimus versus AMD solutions, things like that. And then obviously a lot of emphasis on the performance. And there are 5 configurations that are compared in the performance. If we look at them, you'll see that there is 2 from NVIDIA's Kepler line, the GT640M and the GT630M. The AMD Trinity APU, the latest AMD APU, I think it's the HD7660G is the number they assign to the graphics portion of that APU. And then both versions of Intel's HD4000 graphics. And you might say, well, both versions of it, that doesn't make any sense. The higher end models, the quad-core versions that were released initially with Ivy Bridge have a HD4000 implementation that runs at a noticeably higher clock speed than those that ship with the Ultrabooks, the dual-core Ultrabooks, the ultra-low voltage-based parts. And you'll see some pretty significant differences between all 5 of those components. If we used HD4000, the high-end, as a baseline, the reference version gives you like 72% of that performance, but then you go all the way up to the GT640M and you're getting 212% of that performance, right? So while HD4000 is an improvement for gaming, it's not, especially if you want to play games like Diablo 3, Skyrim, maybe even Battlefield 3, but then he also tested Civ 5, Dawn of War 2. Those are kind of a little bit older, more mainstream titles. That adding a discrete GPU to a notebook can still make a difference. And he kind of comes to the conclusion at the end of the story that right now NVIDIA has the best solutions available, right? So if you can get an Ultrabook with an integrated GT630M, and it's not a huge cost increase, it's actually a good benefit, right? In terms of your ability to game without really affecting your power consumption and your battery life and all those things that go along with it. So if you are kind of hinting around the idea of buying a new laptop, Ivy Bridge based, maybe with Trinity based, maybe discrete GPU, then definitely check out that article. I think it will enlighten you onto what you should be looking for out on the market. But as always, like trying to make hard recommendations on laptops is almost impossible because there's a billion SKUs, at least. At least.
What do you think about Linus's rant and NVIDIA's response? It's kind of funny. Open source drivers for open source operating systems, primarily Linux, or have always been an issue for a lot of people. Last week, Linus Torvalds, quote, gave a speech at the Alto Center for Entrepreneurship. The aspect that most people picked up on was a certain disparaging statement towards NVIDIA. Since then, the video has spread rapidly around the internet with critics for and against the statement. Linus does not believe that NVIDIA is easy to work with regarding Linux support. In short, NVIDIA PR recently responded to his statement stating that the company is in fact heavily involved with Linux development, albeit mobile kernels. NVIDIA stated in its press release, supporting Linux is important to the company, and they understand how important a positive Linux experience using NVIDIA hardware is. What do you think, man? Because NVIDIA, do you think NVIDIA is that much harsher towards Linux than AMD, ATI?
So I think there are 2 things at work here. One, and it kind of all stems from the same thing. NVIDIA is very protective of its IP and its driver, in particular with something like Optimus. So Optimus is that technology that lets it switch between discrete integrated GPUs on laptops, kind of like we were just talking about. And they don't want the competition to figure out how they're doing that. And maybe they're doing things that they shouldn't be doing electrically on the bus, and maybe they don't want other people to figure out those things. So NVIDIA does release drivers for Linux fairly regularly, I guess. 7
already. It's like we support a wide variety of GPUs on Linux, including our latest GeForce Quadro and Tesla-class GPUs for both desktop and notebook platforms.
Yeah.
The drivers for these platforms are updated regularly, with 7 updates released so far this year for Linux alone.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. But the issue that I think the Linux community has in general is that NVIDIA doesn't release them under the same open source license as the rest of Linux. That's really what it comes down to. They release drivers, but they are closed. They're not open. That kind of limits what you could do in a lot of ways in the Linux environment with these drivers. But they're not gonna shift on it just because Linus flipped them off and told them off on video that has now been spread basically across the entire technology world. They feel that this is the way that company works, right? They're very protective of their IP. They believe that what they have is valuable, and they don't want to share it. And as long as they're is the GTX 680 supported in Linux today? Yes, it is, and that's a good thing. And I think 4 or 5 years ago that would not have been the case. More than likely you would have to wait many months for the latest GPUs to be supported. So as long as they're doing that, I find it really hard to be really upset about it. But I'm not a developer. I'm not part of that kind of entrenched community either.
Yeah, it's funny because they basically flat out state. I like how we understand that some people would prefer us to provide detailed documentation of all of our GPU internals or be more active in Linux kernel community development discussions. We have made a decision to support Linux on our GPUs by leveraging NVIDIA Common Code rather than the Linux Common Infrastructure. While this may not please everyone, it does allow us to support the most consistent GPU experience to our customers, regardless of platform or operating system. And by the way, if you actually do have a notebook with the Optimus notebook technology, check out bumblebee-project.org, which basically is essentially the open source effort to support that technology inside of Linux, which is pretty delete expletive cool if you ask me. So, to completely change subjects before we go into more graphics card discussion, Western Digital's new routers, are they any good? It was kind of a funny moment where you're like, okay, hard drive company. Okay, they made some set-top boxes, started a few years ago. First, they did one that was basically attachable to a hard drive, and then they kind of just were like, okay, people actually want the internet. Now, the MyNet N900 HD router, I wrote that up for PCPer.com. And it's kind of an interesting moment where you're like, wow, it's just a router with a Western Digital brand. Because it always makes me a little uptight. Like, why is a hard drive company doing that?
So I didn't actually spend time with these, but Alan did. And Alan, he's like a network guy, right? And he was really impressed with. So it is like, in many ways, it's just a router. It does have the capability to do 3x3 MIMO, so it does support, I believe that would be up to 450 megabits per second wireless if you have, a compatible receiver and that kind of deal. It was a high quality router. Like the interface is very well done, very well organized, lots of options and controls. Yeah. And it's sometimes I think it's nice to see a fresh outlook from like a new company on doing something like this. Like when Corsair entered the case world was very stale, very stagnant. Nothing had really changed. They entered, and not only did it improve things because they were there, but it improved things all around. And I'm hoping some of these companies entering this will be like that as well. There is a USB connection on there, and Alan did point out last night, even though the port is blue, it's only USB 2.0. So don't get super duper excited there. But I'm not going to go through the hardware on it, but
it's probably worth mentioning one of the big things that they're pushing is there's like 4 different routers in the series with various hardware configurations. One of the big things they're pushing is Fast Track, which is an in-house developed QoS, quality of service. And it's kind of like, in the sense of D-Link, it's pre-configured, but it looks to be fairly sophisticated. So you can prioritize your network services, you can prioritize your gaming. And it's an interesting quote. The MyNet router makes itself aware of the upstream and downstream caps presence on the connected modem and ensures those streaming services will always have full bandwidth by actively stepping in and limiting bandwidth allocated to everything else. So it's really, it seems to be pretty functional. For a demo they did for Alan, they had 8 simultaneous streams worth of load to MyNet's network, and you could actually see how it impacted. And it's pretty cool that they actually had a tool he could look at to show how it actually impacted the available bandwidth, with Fast Track enabled and Fast Track off. It works for Skype. The only con Alan found with it was that you have to manually reboot it if you have a fail. But Fast Track looks to be doing really good traffic shaping. quote, very slick parental controls, and the interface, I got to say, I've taken a look at a bunch of screenshots, different reviews of the interface, and it looks really, really good. And, as somebody who's basically given up on Cisco/Linksys, I actually probably should be a little more excited about the fact that there's somebody out there turning out a router that looks like it's worth caring about. Because I literally have 2 Linksys routers that are less than 2 years old in the closet, because I'm like, you know what, I'm never buying another router from them again. Should we take a moment to thank our friends over at Ford?
I think we should definitely do that. This episode here at This Week in Computer Hardware, it's only partially cut off on this screen behind me. We need to get a smaller TV behind me. We're brought to you this week by Ford, featuring the My Ford mobile smartphone app for electric vehicles. With the My Ford mobile app, you can do things like take advantage of the value charging feature powered by Microsoft based on your local utilities participation. So check on that. It allows Ford customers to take advantage of off-peak or reduced rates from their utility without a complicated setup process. So this way, not only are you doing good for the environment and likely saving money by owning an electric vehicle, but you are making sure you are taking electric from the grid when it is at its cheapest and possibly at its best for the environment. It puts less strain on everything. You can use go times to precondition your vehicle's temperature before you depart to conserve battery energy. I didn't know they could do that. That's pretty sweet. You can monitor charging, get alerts, find charging stations, and plan out your drive all through this app. Make sure that you are within your ranges and that there's stations nearby if you need to get there. You can share and learn smart driving tips in the forums on the My Ford mobile website with gaming features such as leaderboards, unique achievements, and social networking available to drivers of Ford electric and plug-in hybrid vehicles. That's kind of cool. So they've mixed in some of the like Nike fuel type stuff into the app as well. You can monitor how far you drive, how much CO2 you save by not using gas. That's all really cool stuff that you can do with this app. The My Ford mobile app makes the electric driving experience fun and efficient. The 2012 Ford Focus Electric is available to purchase right now. Learn more about Ford electric vehicle technologies at ford.com/technology. And we thank Ford for their support of the entire This Week in Tech network, and particularly This Week in Computer Hardware.
Woohoo! Thank you, Ford. Galaxy English is such a difficult language. Galaxy GeForce GT 640. Thumbs up or thumbs down?
So this gets a thumbs down. It's a cool card because it has this neat kind of like lift-up fan shroud on it. But this is the first card we test with GK107, which is the smallest Kepler chip. And it just, I don't know what NVIDIA is going to do with this. At $99, it goes head-to-head against the Radeon 7750, and it loses a lot.
Faults.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you're going to spend $100 on a graphics card, like a discrete kind of upgrade option, or you or somebody in your family is asking, what should I buy for that $100 range, the Radeon 7750 is a much better option in terms of just raw gaming performance for that money. So, not too much to say about this because it's not a fun thing.
And something that's kind of fun on the benchmarking side of thing, FutureMark, who are the fine folks that make 3D Mark, are teasing the 3D Mark DirectX 11 with a tech demo video. So if you are curious, you guys PCPro.com posted a few screenshots of the video not too long ago, and the embedded video shows a mysterious figure walking through a small town nestled in a canyon with smoke, lava, and a flying robot to keep her company. Graphics are very detailed. The particle and fluid physics look really good. Quote, it should do a great job of stressing out your graphics cards when it comes out in the latest 3D Mark. And we have no idea when that's going to be.
No idea.
It could be 3D Mark for Windows 8. Could be 3D Mark the next generation. Stay tuned at FutureMark. Gosh, I can't remember FutureMark's website. FutureMark.com?
Yeah, I think that's all it is. Both will work, I think. So it's an interesting looking video. There's nothing else really to go by it except that it's kind of got a Tron feel to it. This person that they describe as a her has no arms that I can see. I don't know. It's just cool to see. We like to see new fancy flashy graphics.
Shiny happy graphics.
Yeah.
Cooler
exactly.
Master's back with a new cooler, the TPC 812, the revenge of the return of the vapor changer. the vapor chamber, excuse me. XBit Labs actually did the full review on that, and they were somewhat less than impressed. Or as their title says, kind of cruelly, well forgotten old Cooler Master TPC 812 CPU cooler review. Maybe it was a mistake to give up the vapor chamber technology a while back. And their conclusion, well, I'll let you go to xbitlabs.com to actually read the conclusion, but I'll give you a hint. I don't think I'll be swapping to one of these. I don't think I'm going to be swapping to one of these anytime soon.
Doesn't sound like it.
No. Performance was a little less than impressive, so if you see one on the shelves, you might want to pass it by. OCC is going with Indie Links with Vertex 4. And
that's not really, I don't think that's really new information, though. I don't think they've actually swapped back and forth between on this particular model, but they do have on the Vertex 4, they did release a new firmware version. It's either 4.0 or 1.4. I think it's 1.4 now, that had a lot of performance improvements that Alan tested on not too long ago. So if you do a search on our site for Vertex 4 firmware, I'm sure you'll find it up at the top. But yes, it might be a good spot for us to mention again what you kind of alluded to at the beginning of the show, that SSD prices are like incredibly cheap all of a sudden.
Yeah. Why is that?
We talked a little bit last night about, 75 cents per gigabyte, sometimes 72 cents per gigabyte on normal prices. These are regular prices found at places like Newegg and that kind of stuff on everything from the Crucial drives to the Indie Links drives, from OCZ to SandForce 2000 to SandForce 2 drives. The whole gamut, and it seems to have happened all at once. And we were kind of discussing it last night. I don't think it's a temporary thing. I don't think it's a result of some kind of market event or anything like that. I really believe that prices are here to stay, and maybe they're going to keep going down lower, which I think everybody except those selling them to us could be really excited about.
People are going to make money making money will be excited about the release.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Alan Mello, it's English. Looking so forward to these braces being gone. Alan, another article by Alan. Drobo releases a new Thunderbolt and USB 3.0 5D and a mini, both mSATA SSD accelerated. I actually just got an email about this week, and I'm looking forward to see what they've turned out. The Drobo 5D, which is basically a 5-bay Drobo S on steroids. And what's interesting is they're using USB plus Thunderbolt. Speeds up the I/O per second and multi-stream performance using an mSATA SSD. So I'm curious if that's going to be like pre-caching hit data or something.
Yep.
The SSD actually goes in a little trapdoor on the bottom of the 5D. And the Drobo Mini has a whole bunch of connectivity, basically the USB 3.0 Thunderbolt, but is tiny. So what they're actually using is in the Mini, they're using 4 2.5-inch drives instead of using full 3.5-inch drives. You can get like 4 terabytes in this little tiny box there. Well, actually, probably 8 pretty soon. I remember the largest 2.5-inch hard drive I've seen. So I'll be really curious to see Alan get his benchmarking on with those. And the Drobo Mini is really trippy because I'm already thinking of like, wow, that would be really cool for doing video production at CES and stuff, where you can have this basically the mock RAID, the non-RAID that is in Drobo, the robotic data device. So I'm also I know what the prices on those are going to be.
I can give you that would be nice to know. I've been playing with Thunderbolt on Windows, so the Asus P8 Z77V premium board, and a couple of the Promise or Pegasus R4 RAID arrays, Thunderbolt drives, and I can get a single 4-bay array to go as high as like 650 to 680 megabytes per second over Thunderbolt. And then I can maximize it with 2 of those drives, daisy chain, 2 of those units, 2 of those R4s daisy chain. I think we hit like 940 megabytes per second. So we're pretty much hitting, the theoretical limit of that 10 gigabit per second connection. So I may turn out to be more impressed with Thunderbolt than I thought.
Thunderbolt, I think, is really interesting, especially when you have SSD. Actually, I'm looking to pick up some. There are no USB 3.0 or Thunderbolt adapters, but I'm actually playing around with USB 3.0 SD card readers, which is like,
yeah, that's
USB
true.
2.0 sucks.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It just sucks.
Once you taste USB 3.0, like even if I accidentally hook my external hard drive on my laptop into the USB 2.0 port, I start to transfer something, and I'm like, oh, man, now I got to wait or cancel it and move it, and yeah, oh well.
This is going to take forever, man. What's not going to take forever is emailing us. TWiCH, TWiCH. There's no T. TWiCH at twit.tv. There's a whole bunch of T's in twit.tv. TWiCH at twit.tv is the email address. We'd love to hear from you, or you can Twitter at us. Patrick Norton is my Twitter handle, at Patrick Norton, or at Ryan Shrout. The two of us apparently being profoundly creative human beings that want to confuse you on the Twitter. The best way to get a hold of us. First email today, we got an email from Steve about Trinity laptops. He says, love the show, listen every week. Thank you, Steve. So I know you are the guys to help me with this problem. I want to find an AMD A10 4655M laptop somewhere in the 13 to 14-inch range for moving around the shop. Won't be text hard most of the time, so most of the specs are not too important. I'll probably drop in my own SSD and upgrade with my own RAM if it's too low. I want a decent resolution, sturdy construction. I'd like to keep it under $700 if possible. I'll be looking to purchase in the next couple of months. So you actually found on Amazon one of HP's DV6s.
Yeah, so my issue here is, as I kind of look around just to make sure, I found a lot of 11-inch Trinity laptops, right, and I found a lot of 15-inch Trinity laptops. But in that 13 to 14 range, like even looking around Amazon and Newegg for a couple of them, I really didn't see much in the realm of that specific form factor, which is odd because that would be, I don't know, I would assume by now Trinity would be in many different form factors, everything from the sleek books, the Ultrabook styles, up to everything else in between, 13s, 14s, 15s, maybe even a 17-inch. Or something every once in a while. So the one that I linked to there in our show notes is was it $589, I guess, or something like that. So it's relatively inexpensive for the performance you get. $529, I'm sorry. But it does have a bigger screen. It's a little bit of a bulkier unit. It's going to be a little bit heavier. But with that, you get a little bit of a bigger battery. I don't know. I need to look around more on this because when I put this question in here, I thought I'd just be able to kind of search and find a 13 to 14-inch model. And that was not the case. And I think this is one of AMD's big problems with the Trinity launch so far is that they are not doing a very good job promoting those models that utilize Trinity correctly or well. Intel doesn't have to do that because 80-something%, 85, 90% of all the laptops that are sold already have Intel in there, so they don't need to promote it. If you just go to a store to buy a laptop, there's a pretty good chance you're going to leave with an Intel one. AMD, on the other hand, needs to be a little bit more proactive with their promotion, right? There should be a page on AMD.com where you can go see all the Trinity laptops, pick your vendor, pick your screen size, and help direct people to the right places and that kind of stuff. So I'm going to do a little bit more searching this week and maybe pin some of these questions to the AMD people that will be here this weekend as well and kind of see if we get some better answers.
Sounds like a plan. We have an email from, sorry, I was cutting and pasting some tweets towards us, tweet questions. Ed has a question about AMD for home theater PC. It says, I'm very interested in how well the new low-power AMD chips will be for a simple home theater PC application. I use it for playback only. I'm currently using an Atom with Ion graphics, so almost anything will be an improvement. Keep up the good work, Ed. Ed, baby, go. I give you permission to immediately upgrade to the first AMD-powered machine you can get your hands on.
We know Llano already exists today and makes a pretty good home theater PC option. Trinity will be coming soon, but AMD has been pushing a lot of Llano rebates and stuff like that, trying to get combos. You can get an A6, I think, with an A75 motherboard for $250. And be micro ATX. They have some mini ITX options as well, and build a really cheap home theater PC that can do modest gaming, right? Depending on if you want to do 720p or 1080p. And it's definitely going to be an upgrade over Atom and Ion. That's Yeah, we need him to be rid of that stuff fairly soon.
There's nothing wrong with keeping your Atom and Ion machine if you're happy with it. If you're looking for some more performance, some better support of some of the stiffer codecs out there, yeah, pretty much any of the AMD boxes will make you happy. We got an email from Blaine about those Cat Leap monitors. I love listening to your podcast. Thank you, Blaine. So many podcasts nowadays are so focused on mobile and gadgets that it's refreshing to get down to the nitty-gritty of computer hardware. Hopefully that doesn't mean we're falling behind the curve and becoming irrelevant. I just wanted to follow up from a comment made a couple of weeks ago about Cat Leap monitors and how relatively inexpensive they are for a 27-inch IPS 2560 by 1440 display. And I just wanted to share my experience since I bit the bullet and purchased one. Before doing so, I did do some research into them, and there are quite a few forums out there with fans who support these monitors. Now, let me get this straight. This might not be a top-of-the-line panel, A+ for those of you familiar with what most OEMs put out, but they are qualified as A-, which means that there shouldn't be any blemishes or dead pixels. However, the eBay seller is quick to point out that there are higher limits of acceptable dead pixels before the display is declared defective. However, after reading about all of this, and other people's good responses to receiving them, I did it and purchased for $319, less than half of most other manufacturers for a 2560 by 1440 27-inch display. It was delivered via DHL Express. I miss those guys in the U.S., says Blaine, and arrived in perfect condition. I hooked it all up, and as far as I can tell, there doesn't appear to be any issues with it, no dead pixels or DOA or anything else. The only complaint I have is that it didn't come with another graphics card, so I guess I'm going to be looking at getting another AMD 6970 to crossfire with my current GPU, but that's another story. I just thought I'd let you guys know, and if anyone else is curious about trying a Cat Leap and is willing to put $320 on the line for a really nice product, whether it be to complement what you have or a new main monitor, I'd say go for it. Thanks a lot, guys, and I look forward to hearing from you. Love the show. Blaine, thank you so much.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear, because Ken here is one of those guys who's been like on the edge, right? He heard us talk about him, last month or 2 months ago. He was like, and he was doing a lot of reading in the forums and picking out which ones are the better ones. But for $319, you can get a 27-inch 2560 by 1440 display. In comparison, just last week, I had in my possession a $999 Apple Thunderbolt display, 27-inch 2560 by 1440. Great display. Hate the fact that you can only use it on a Thunderbolt-based device. But great display. But, I mean, for a third of the cost, you can get this Cat Leap, which I think is an awesome name now. Before I thought that the brand name was kind of crazy. But I think the marketing for that just writes itself. And Cat Leap displays could find their way all over the country if I want to see somebody not on eBay sell them. That's what I want to see. I want to see Newegg carry it. I want to see Amazon sell them.
Well, maybe they can't. Maybe they have restrictions. Who knows? But it's sometimes you just got to roll with the eBay and the crazy international seller. And now we have, now I'm looking for okay, FedEx, where's the DHL guy? I want the one from the DHL guy. But it's amazing. $299, $319, $309, $289, $318. I'm looking at a link, a bunch of Cat Leap Q270s on eBay.
Yeah.
Returns accepted within 14 days. Returns accepted within 30 days. $324.
We'll probably end up doing that here by the time I get back from Texas. Calling it now.
Oh, here's one that's $920 with free shipping. I don't know what that. Oh, wait, is it 3 of them?
Oh,
it's 3 Cat Leaps for $920.
Now you've got your iFinity or NVIDIA surround setup for under $1,000. 3 27-inch displays at 2560 resolution. That's really impressive, actually. And I wish I didn't know about those.
Should we do one?
We have time for one more email, I guess. This one's kind of in the same thread of high-res displays from Kent. He says, thanks to the podcast, guys. Listen to it religiously every week. Thank you. The computer world seems to be stuck at 1920 by 1200 or 1920 by 1080 resolution for the past several years. I can't find myself going to a 27 or 30-inch display because the panels would be too large for me to use comfortably. The recent release of the MacBook Pro 15-inch with Retina display makes it clear that it is possible to create high pixel density, 200 or plus, he clarifies, displays larger than 4 inches. I don't think that's 4 inches. For the consumer market, what do you think it would take for the high pixel density display technology to be available as an off-the-shelf product for consumers? Something like the ViewSonic 32-inch 4K monitor they showed off at Computex makes me drool, but the $25,000 to $50,000 price tag obviously does not. So what do we think? Do we think that the creation of this kind of Retina display technology on the new MacBook Pro is going to start the trend for 22-inch 2560 displays or anything like that?
No, actually, if it does happen, I think it's going to take years. I think availability. You're talking about essentially a $200 part becoming like a $600 part. There's a $400 VIG between a MacBook Pro and a MacBook Pro with a Retina display. It's an incredibly expensive display. I think the yields are probably low because we have so many pixels on the glass there, on that 15-inch glass. And they're having difficulty with a relatively manageable display, which is a 27-inch display. Of course, now we'll get an email next week from somebody who works in the display industry in Taiwan or Korea being like, you have it all wrong.
I hope so.
But yeah, I mean, I would love to see more high-resolution displays. Once you've seen a super, I mean, I want a 4K display. The problem is just the glass would be insanely expensive. The computer world is kind of stuck at 1920 by 1080 in part because that's 1080p and there's a whole lot of 1080p glass being made and nobody's making much money on HDTVs and they're not making a lot of money on monitors. So maybe glass companies will see this as an opportunity to make more money if they produce a more lucrative product for the PC industry. But man, I wouldn't hold my breath. Ryan and I have been staring at purchasing 27 or 30-inch monitors for like upwards of a year at this point, probably a year and a half. And it took like the cat leap for $320 on eBay for us to be like, wow, we can swing this. $1,000. Apple's still comfortably getting $1,000 for their 27-inch monitors. So. I think the insanely high-resolution monitors, are they coming? Yeah. Are they coming anytime soon? Probably not as soon as any of us want, Kent, much to our sadness. Can we sneak in one more from one of the tweet questions? Because you had requested tweeting.
I did. You're right.
We got a tweet from Tyler, a.k.a. at DBNM, at Ryan Shrout, at Patrick Norton. When building your own computer, how does one know what size power supply to get, i.e. 600 watts, 750 watt, 1,000 watts? I'm going to defer to you on this one because I always, at this point, like until I finally start going into dual GPUs, I just grab like the cheapest quality 750 or 800 watt power supply I can get my hands on at the time. Because for some reason, I've decided I need more power than I actually need.
if you just Google PSU calculator, there's one called the Extreme Power Supply Calculator, and it's been around for a long time, and it's not it's not 100% accurate, but it's pretty reasonable in its assumptions of what you're going to do, right? So I'm going to say he's building an Ivy Bridge processor with single GPU, maybe a GTX 670 or something a little bit lower than that, and an SSD and a hard drive and basic kind of components from there on out. If I were building that system today, I would probably go with something 600 watts, 650 watts. And that's overkill a little bit for the components. Even if you have like a GTX 680, that's more than you're going to need in terms of power draw. But it gives you a little wiggle room, right? You don't want to, when you go to the that calculator, it's going to give you a minimum PSU wattage and then a recommended wattage. And I think that's just a percentage thing that they come up with something that Lee would say is, calculate how much power, the most power your devices can use, and add 20% to that, maybe 15%. And that's the power supply you should have to handle any spikes. And if you do add other components down the road, you don't have to necessarily upgrade your power supply. I think, yes, we still talk about review 1,000-watt power supplies, 1,200-watt power supplies, but they're not really necessary for the majority of people unless you have large spanning goals for your system, in the long term. for our CPU test bed, for example, we're using a 650 watt power supply, and so we throw every CPU at it, and then a mid-range GPU, SSD, optical drive, hard drives every once in a while, and that kind of stuff. And it's well under those levels. So I think you can look at this power supply calculator. I'm going to see here what they have for their GPU options, because you can add if you want. You can add 2 or 3 GPUs in here at one time. So they've got some old stuff in here too. So if I go all the way,
you should try plugging in, like, for my Rip Monster. Sorry, that's why I was so distracted. Like, okay, 4 hard disk drives. I've got like, he won't even let me put in 6 CD-ROM drives. So I've got like, so I've got to do like 5 DVD-ROM drives and 2 Blu-ray drives.
Yeah. I mean, a simple. Let's see, what did it come up with? Core i7 processor with a GTX 680. They're recommending a 300 watt power supply, right? Minimum. And so 600 watts is going to be enough for, I think, most people. I hate making vague, like, just all encompassing statements, but I think that will work. It's
amazing what you can do with a 500 or 600 watt power supply until you start dumping on lots of GPUs. When you start getting, I don't think I've hit update yet because it just told me I need a 34 watt power supply.
Yes. No, you have to hit the calculate button. You definitely have to do that.
It even says even with 5 freaking DVD drives and 4 hard drives and a 7900. Wow, I still only need like a 500 watt power supply. And I'll bump it up to 750. So, hey, it looks like I was dead on with my usual guest. Tyler, excellent question. Go out and buy a new PSU with relative emotional comfort about it being big enough to handle what you're doing. Unless you've got 3 GPUs, in which case, go for a 1200 watt. Any particular hard drive, or power supply brands that are striking you as being awesome right now? Brian?
We tend to trust Corsair around here. They've been in the power supply market for a while now, and they've built some pretty good stuff. The PC Power and Cooling brand is still known to be like one of the highest end. They tend to be not quiet and that kind of stuff. Although they do have some updated models that are a little bit better at that. Thermaltake makes good ones. There are a lot of good ones out there. Just read your reviews. You can go to PCPer.com or any other hardware site that does power supply reviews. In our site, you can go to the cases and cooling section and see all of our PSU reviews that Lee does and get an idea of which brands and lines we recommend.
I'm up at hardocp.com and I'm looking at the Lipa G Series 1600 watt power supply.
Don't buy that. Don't buy that. I don't know anything about the brand. It has nothing to do against the brand, but you probably don't need a 1600 watt power supply.
It got a silver award, so it's doing good on their power supply evaluations. I'm just laughing. I'm like, wow, that's a big ass power supply.
Yep.
That could be the title for this show, Big Ass Power Supply. Oh my goodness. What's coming up on PC Per this week?
So like I said, tomorrow, which will be Friday, probably by the time this actually goes out, at 2 p.m., we're going to have a special AMD Radeon Graphics presentation live at pcper.com/live. So you can expect a new GPU review to go up tomorrow. And then on Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern, you can go to the same URL, pcper.com/live, and watch me attempt to build a Llano-based PC completely blindfolded and mock me while I do it. So that would be fun.
Oh, my goodness. We had something unfortunate, the original VT50 that showed up for HC Nation's evaluation of what may be what many people are saying is the best plasma display, possibly the best flat panel available in 2012. Actually, something terrible happened to it in shipping, so we're waiting for a new one. We've got the Sonos Sub. The Sonos Play 3, Play 5 now have a big old honking subwoofer to go with them. Bushnell, one of Bushnell's new HD Life wildlife cameras. And why your password probably sucks. If you have a password that is gibberish, that mixes uppercase and lowercase numbers and letters and lots of symbols, we've got some reasons why you might want to completely rethink the password you use. And that's all coming up next week on Techzilla.
I can't only remember so many passwords, man.
That's why you use a password manager like LastPass or OnePass.
All right. I've always heard that the trick always, I think I read this in some magazine somewhere, was to use a sentence, like a phrase of several words in a row that are really easy for you to remember, but is like 25 characters long or something like that, you know?
There is a particularly, let me put the link into the show notes. There is a absolutely, utterly, totally brilliant cartoon from XKCD.
That might have been it. That might have been where I saw it.
I'm sure it is, because it's basically like password strength, uncommon, non-gibberish, base word, order unknown.
Yep.
It's like 28 bits of entropy, a trombone or a troubadour, and what it was, one of the O's was a 0, and there was some symbol, and they're really hard to remember. And then you take 4 random common words: correct, horse, battery, staple, which gives you like 44 bits of entropy, which at 1,000 guesses per second, which takes 2 to the 44th years, which is like 550 years, which makes it very hard for computers to guess. And the summary is, through 20 years of effort, we've successfully trained everyone to use passwords that are hard for humans to remember, but easy for computers to guess. The guy that does XKCD being much more experienced with the math than I will ever be.
Yes.
Hey, if you're a big fan of TWiCH, This Week in Computer Hardware, do us a favor. Send an email to the page for the podcast, or send a link to the podcast to one of your friends. Tell them to check it out. We want to grow the audience and start doing more exciting things for you. TWiCH, ladies and gentlemen, at twit.tv is the email address. We love your questions. Keep them coming. We answer as many as we can. And I got to say, that's about it for this edition of TWiCH. I'm Patrick Norton.
I'm Ryan Shrout.
We'll see you next week on TWiCH.